Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of a Fujoshi Commentary, your go-to place for anime, manga, and yaoi facts, recommendations, and reviews, all done by yours truly. So today I want to do a sort of mini recommendation slash challenge Japan to step the fuck up, because I have fallen in love with Japan's more or less bittersweet cousin, or as they're actually called, Manhwa, and I have three beautifully delicious manhwa that I really want to recommend, and I want to tell you why I recommend them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first manhwa I want to recommend is the lovely and probably a little more well-known one, Blood Bank. Now imagine if the setup in Blood Bank, we were all sold out to vampires. We are literally shit. We are compared to nothing more than the dirt on the ground in the vampiric world that is Blood Bank. It's post-apocalyptic utopia for vampires. We're just livestock and cattle for blood tax. It's a pretty interesting concept. This manhwa, it just completely takes it in a whole different direction. Now this manhwa is by Silb, and it highlights two protagonists, Shell Overlord and One, which otherwise known as Eric, which you'll find out why he's called One in the manga. Now, it's told from a sort of 1 to 3rd person point of view. In the beginning, the first few chapters, it's told from One's point of view about his everyday life, what he does for a living, his sort of everyday routine, and how he is mesmerized by this young lord who is Shell and his whole persona. While you first glance at this manhwa myself, I thought that this was going to be one of those typical blonde tsundere who really irritate you, or yandere, which depends, since this is a vampire manhwa. But I thought that this was going to be one of those typical blonde tsundere, really bitchy and angsty sort of manhwa, but I was completely blown away and out of the ballpark. While there's like more sides to this Shell Overlord than Robert Mitchum would in any other movie in his lifetime, there is also the sort of baseline that just happens in this manhwa. It's so amazing, and you go from, oh, it's gonna be a little BDSM play, you know, this is gonna be one of those yaois, we're gonna love it, but it's actually very different, and it kind of even promotes safe BDSM in a way. It really does. It's not completely inaccurate to promoting somewhat safe BDSM, and it's really just kind of like, you think, oh yeah, he's just a masochist, and oh yeah, One is a sadist. Now the whole synopsis and story with Blood Bank, basically, without spoiling too much and giving away too much detail, it's basically the lives of a human blood banker named One, and his sort of devotion and newfound relationship with the blood bank son of the owner, Shell Overlord, who's over the Overlord territory. But at the same time, there's also this sort of connection that they bond, as well as other stories branching off into the main one, and sort of all just kind of connecting the dots into the main storyline. I could compare it best to sort of a darker, raw, and more gritty version of One Piece and or Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, but more so One Piece, because One Piece is like straight line, we have a goal, this is like the main plot of the story, and then it kind of branches off into another part of the story in another chapter, sort of a filler, but at the same time it's not completely a filler because it will be used to reference later on in the story. It's a bit of foreshadowing and other things like that, and Blood Bank really does play into that sort of strategy in writing, where you're on the main course, we have Shell and good old One's relationship, as Shell is known as an abnormal, or somebody who isn't so much wanting to dominate humans but wants to be dominated by humans, seen as weak or pathetic. I guess you could compare it to our times, as we believe if a man cries or a boy cries after getting hurt, he's seen as a wimp a pussy, a sissy, you know? That's kind of how that is treated. And one of his good friends, Rain Fear, who is also a part of this whole vampiric connection, he's already been labeled that because easily scared, sort of has like this obedience towards pheromones. He's no better than a human basically to the vampires. So that would be kind of that comparison you'd make to it. There's this whole thing where yes, they're tending to this situation as Shell is an abnormal, trying to keep it secret slash not completely out in the open at times. And then you can branch off into like a flashback or a side story that's going on, and it somehow, even though it may seem kind of like off and you're like, well, what's this gonna be about, it loops back into the main storyline, and then you get more information and it allows the reader to connect the dots. Now if you really like vampires and BDSM and good yaoi tones, but at the same time like a good inch of sentiment and relationship, like really hardcore love, not like sexual love, more so a genuine pure love, and characters who aren't seen as either good or bad, and they have more complex personalities that, for example, not to give too much away, but Shell Overlord being a vampire as well as being an abnormal is kind of put in this stalemate because he personally is a vampire, and vampires are held to this expectation to belittle humans, look down on them, but at the same time he himself feels like he can't do that because he's never really had that in him. He's locked in this huge stalemate that he can't really get out of. I really encourage anyone to read this. All the links to the manhwa I have will be in the description. The one thing I love about this, in addition to the other two I'm recommending, is that they are consistent with uploading. This manhwa has been around since 2015. The manhwa's creator has a Twitter that she updates for when she has a new chapter out, and they also have a website where you can actually support the artist but do it in a affordable and installment-like manner, which I will link all that in the description. It's just an amazing manhwa. I recommend reading it. If you don't pay to read it, at least read and support her on Twitter and spread the word out and things like that, because it's an amazing manhwa. I recommend it 100%. That's the top tier recommendation right now. It's been a while since I've had like sort of hardcore yaoi, but still give me the relationships that I need. It's like raw reality mixed with a good mixture of our raw fantasies just kind of combining. Even though it is a fantasy, you can still relate to these beautiful characters. Now the next one is called Never Understand or Out of Control. The titles may vary with the English translation, and it's by Bobong, who is also a Korean manhwa. This is the first time since Kappaniskas no Kokyu, or Kappaniskas Breath, by Nakamura Asumiko, have I seen a manhwa or a comic with yaoi in it. This one is more so shonen-ai than yaoi, as Kappaniskas no Kokyu was more of a yaoi, but it's the first time I've seen complex and in-depth analysis of each character that is encountered and put together so mischievously that you kind of slips up on you as you're reading about it. The basic synopsis is that Yuri is a popular, a pretty, beautiful young boy in school. And then there's Jareem Kim. I remember his full name the most because it's so drilled into your head throughout the story. It's drilled into your head until the point of just absurdity. So you kind of have to remember his name. And he is one of the ugliest kids. He's got like freckles, he's got like this weird ass part straight down the middle going on his head. He's just ugly. And Yuri is like this beautiful celestial being of pretty. He has green eyes, which is rare in Korea among Koreans. He apparently he is biracial, which is sort of a spoiler, but the actual tie into why that is mentioned. I am not going to reveal that, but you can read it, and it's just, whew, it's the sort of story that you think be cliche when like the popular kid gets with the ugly kid, and oh, they're coming together. No, that's not what it is. It's a roller coaster of just feels on top of feels on top of feels of each character. Not just the main characters, but all in all, the entire cast of characters. Except for like the female characters, but I think even then they're going to be revealed. Because it's the way the manhwa artist puts these subtle hints in there. For example, this story takes place as far as the beginning. Kim Ja-reem was rejected from the student council because he wasn't pretty enough. Like, they literally tell him that you were ugly, that's why you weren't picked on the team. He is on the team because they have nobody else to fill the positions by the one of the very few female characters who I never found annoying in yaoi and shonen. Next to Noriko from Gravitation, she's one of the very few females in yaoi or shonen that I didn't find annoying. And Juhi is just like over the top out there. She's so blunt, but at the same time she's super sweet. You just can't hate her. And I'm just like, yes. She tells him like, yeah, you're kind of ugly, so that's why, but I'm still hiring you. And Kim Ja-reem's just doing menial labor and stuff like that, being bossed around by Yuri. Yuri's the vice president, so, you know, he's like still in command, but still not in command, and Juhi is like the president. And you find out different little quirks that both of them have, and you think, oh my goodness, this is gonna be a cliche. But it's kind of interesting because the way that you get introduced to some of the characters that are more side characters in the story. For example, there's a former class president who was there before Juhi and everything, and he's about to graduate and get into university. And he's introduced sort of as this peripheral figure of presidential knowledge, how your star students are supposed to be. Kind of reserved, quiet, says very little, but when he does say things, it's always the right thing that people want to hear. He's very idolized by the females and males in this story. Kim Ja-reem in particular is very, very inspired by him. That's the whole reason he joined the student council to begin with. You think he's just like, oh, he's just gonna be helpful. He's gonna help with this situation. And when the whole situation that becomes a misunderstanding between Kim Ja-reem after he finds out that Yuri likes him, because they do end up getting together, but it's a weird way how that comes about, which you can read. But when Kim Ja-reem finds out that Yuri does like him, he kind of feels like in this weird corner because he himself is not a gay male. Like, he has never thought about men as far as sexually, and he's all confused, and you know, the typical straight guy, not really into being confronted by a guy who he feels is probably gay but doesn't really know about what that history is going on. He's just kind of confused because he's been confessed to by a guy, and you know, social norms and things like that. It really tackles real world scenarios and how people would react in the real world to things such as a proposal or bullies. And oh my gosh, bullies in this manhwa. It makes me glad that I graduated from high school. I relate so hard. If you relate hard to bullies and the bystander effects and things like that, this manhwa is for you. Some of these will tear your heart apart. Like a side story into this blonde dude who gets with this blue-haired dude. It's, oh man, it's too much. It's like a whole Stockholm syndrome of desperation, just clouded and shrouded, but there's this all situational irony because the characters are oblivious, but you know, and you're just screaming at your tablet. No! It puts you on a field trip. You're emotionally wrecked by the end of reading whatever chapter is ended out until the next one arrives. And just like Blood Bank, this manhwa completely just, they're consistent with posting. It doesn't take 3 damn years for the next chapter to come out. It only takes like a few weeks. Actually, I was surprised. This update for the last chapter, they gave us 4 chapter updates in 1 week. Horribly translated, but 4. I can manage it. I was assuming you get it every week, but we are getting 4. I guess the Scanlation teams are working hard. Thank you, Scanlation teams. You work hard and I love you. Now this last one is called Royal Servant, and Royal Servant is originally by Master Jin and Chung Young, and this was actually released, this is one of the more recent ones, released in 2016. Never Understand, I believe, was released in 2014 or 15. Blood Bank was 2015. This one is this year, and it's also the last one because it is very, very, very small in chapter size compared to the 77 of Never Understand and the like 44, 45 of Blood Bank. This one has only about 19 chapters, in which the last chapter that was just updated, literally updated like yesterday. So there's a pretty small chapter, but nonetheless, they're still going. Basically, this one is about you're still into your typical yaoi. It's the more of the master servant yaoi, the royal servant. It kind of has the same vibe as Blood Bank, as in regards to supernatural forces that are above humans, have wealth and status, but humans are not treated as slaves as a human race. They're actually like have a choice to work for the royals who have the mystical power. Like this dude, his name is Kyun. Kyun is the main protagonist of the story. He lost his family to these things called erasers. It's kind of like zombie anime genre, such as like Hellsing or High School of the Dead, meets aristocratic powers or vampiric powers, such as Vampire Knight, or kind of has that Vampire Knight mixed with Count of Monte Cristo type feel. And there are these things called erasers. Like, you think additionally, oh yeah, they have power, they're fucking assholes and they're jerks probably. But they actually work to protect the humans and protect humanity and living of and of itself. Because there are these things called erasers where royals aren't really like invincible, even though they're seen by humans as invincible because they have powers and, you know, they can control things to their, you know, to their leisure, not as a human does, but deep down within this story. And we see that with the actual like backstory of the second character in this story. Lushan is the head of the family that Kyun is working for. It makes good money, he needs it, he works there. But he doesn't really realize until he like meets him that years ago this was the same man who worked to fight against erasers as a defender, and he saved his life. But he thinks that Lushan doesn't remember. Lushan probably kinda doesn't. You can't really tell since it's only 19 chapters in, and it's more was so on his friend's side, which we were finding out in backstory and lifestyle. So it's really kind of like a bit slow, just a tad bit slow, and it kind of tossing you around a little bit because Kyun is kind of being treated as a standard servant slavey kind of thing, where he's restrained and it's a little bit of BDSM, and it seems like that Kyun's afraid to oppose him, but at the same time he really kind of likes him, because in his monologue he's like, I like this guy, I like this guy, I like this guy. But it's more of a sort of slower at pace kind of thing. This is a more action-y manhwa than the last two, so if you're into a little more action, a little more in-depth storyline, a little more into that sort of Hellsing-ish Vampire Knight action type of thing with the whole defeating zombies and erasers and trying to maintain control of their sanity and things like that, I recommend it. And I think that you'll love these titles. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've yet to do so already, please feel free to like and share this video. If you got some friends who are like, Korea is trash, all I hear about is K-pop, and then you're like, no, the manhwas are where it's at, and you want to show them this video, please do. It's thoroughly constructed because I'm on field trip right now with these manhwa, but I guarantee they will love it. There's a little something for everyone in each of the ones I recommended. Please go check them out. And in the comments, let me know which one you think is best. If you got any suggestions for me, let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video and found it to be very informative, feel free to give it a like. And subscribe to my channel if you're new here for more yaoi facts, recommendations, reviews. I also do non-yaoi facts. Also, if you are interested in yaoi news, I made a recent video. If you click on the little egg head, you'll find a yaoi news update I did on some double mints if you like Nakamura Asumiko. I also did it on some Super Lovers news if you're really into that anime and you wanted to see that season 2. There's some new updates with that. Also, if you click on these cards, you can find one of the yaoi videos I've done on some manga from Japan recommendations that are finished and were pretty good. So without further ado, guys, peace, love, and stay groovin', humans. Bye!